Okay, welcome viewers to Calaveras Community Television. It's a continuing series of Where is the Water, produced and directed by Paul Moeller. This evening I have with me Larry Thompson on my right and Dwayne Onito of the Utica Power Authority. My name is Rourke Weber, and I'm here to discuss and ask questions regarding Utica Power Authority and the operation of that agency. Before we get into the issue of the FERC license, which governs the operations of the Power Authority, I'd like to ask Dwayne Onito if he would just give the viewers a background on what UPA does and how the people of Calaveras County benefit from it. Dwayne, could you answer that?
Sure. Paul and I put a little tape together down at the UPA office today, but before we go to that, I would like to point out that any time you use the natural resources in the United States, the water for power, to generate power and that type of thing, you need to get a license from the federal government. And the federal organization that handles this is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, as we refer to it, and they have granted that license to us last summer, and we are now in the process of fulfilling those requirements, which we're going to talk about in the middle. Talk about that in a minute after we go to this little tape and background information. I would also like to make the point that this project pays to get the water, the power pays to get the water to Angels Camp and Murphy's, so that there is no need for the users to pay for the conveyance system to get it here. And you will see in this brief little tape, we'll start at Lake Alpine and go down to the powerhouse in Angels. So Paul, if you would go ahead and put that tape on now.
The Utica Power Authority, UPA, is a combination, a joint powers organization of 3 local government entities. The Union Public Utility District in Murphy's, UPA, the City of Angels, and the Calaveras County Water District, CCWD. CCWD put up the money to finance UPA to buy their part of the project from PG&E. Now, the UPA gets its water from a much larger project called the North Fork Project, which is controlled by the Northern California Power Association, NCPA, if you like initials. And this starts, the UPA water starts at Lake Alpine and comes on down the North Fork of the Stanislaus here. New Spicers Reservoir is here. And they move the water from Lake Alpine through the North Fork Diversion Dam over into Spicers. And then it comes on down Highland Creek here and back into the North Fork of the Stanislaus. And as it continues down the North Fork of the Stanislaus, it reaches eventually, although it's not on the map, the McKay's Diversion Dam, where it's put into the Collierville Tunnel and runs down to Camp 9. And in order to pick up the Collierville Tunnel, what we're going to do is we're now going to move over to the other map to show you the tunnel. After the water flows into the tunnel, the Collierville Tunnel at McKay's, this is the Collierville Tunnel here, coming down and running through the Collierville Powerhouse on the Stanislaus at what used to be known as Camp 9, in the Camp 9 area, the old powerhouse here, and runs back in and into Maloney's. UPA takes its water right here from the tunnel tap. And the water comes up out of the tunnel under tremendous pressure, and there's a huge concrete receiving area, and the water comes out under tremendous pressure, runs into a canal, into Hunter's Reservoir there by Hathaway Pines. Hathaway Pines here, Hunter's here. UPA puts it into the canal, which runs down here, coming along until we get here where we have the 3/4 mile flume that burned as they go around Dobby Knob, coming around here, on down until eventually we get to the Murphy's Forebay, which is on the hill above the Utica Powerhouse in Murphy's. The water is then sent through the penstock of the Murphy's Powerhouse, through the Murphy's Powerhouse, and put back into Murphy's Creek, or in Murphy's, although it's the same creek that's Angels Creek in Angels. It flows down until we get below Murphy's. It is diverted through under the Murphy's Grade Road where you see the flume right there as you pass it, comes over into Ross Reservoir here, and then down into the Angels Forebay, and then sent down through the penstock that you see on Murphy's Grade Road and through the Angels Camp Powerhouse right there, and it's put back in the creek right next to the swimming pool. Now, a couple of things that we're going to talk about today and we need to be aware of is the Angels diversion, where the water is diverted below Murphy's over to Ross Reservoir because there is the old creek bed running down through this area, where Murphy's Creek and Angels Creek come together. When we talk about the Angels diversion, we are talking about that area there.
Larry, could you give us a little background on what UPA is comprised of? Who are they, and how did they get formed?
Sure. I'd be happy to, Rourke. Utica Power Authority, or UPA, is composed of 3 different public agencies: Calaveras County Water District, the City of Angels, and Union Public Utility District. These 3 entities came together to purchase this project from PG&E with the intent of maintaining local control. It was clear that others were very interested in the project, and the possibility of people outside the area controlling our water was very, well, it was probably going to happen. And so we stepped in and formed this Joint Powers Authority and purchased the system from PG&E. The 3 entities that operate it don't all benefit water-wise from it. As you saw in the previous tape, UPUD and the City of Angels get their water from the system. CCWD became a partner because it was their investment that made it possible for us to purchase this system.
Okay, Dwayne mentioned earlier that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission regulates UPA, and can you explain what that license does and how long does it take to get one of those licenses? Either you or Dwayne, could you answer that question for me?
I'd be happy to answer that. It's interesting as you go across this country and hear different experiences that entities have had in getting a FERC license. We've been at this, the license itself, probably for about 7 years. The project itself for probably about 10 years. There are entities here in California that have been working on it for over 20 years and still don't have a license. It's a process that requires lots of environmental documentation and many other things that FERC takes a look at, and it's based upon the information that's gathered that they put the conditions down, the conditions by which we operate the project. And there are many conditions to operate even a small project such as ours.
Dwayne, could you just generally comment as to what the terms of that license are and how they affect people here in Angels and Murphys?
Sure. FERC has requires minimum flows in certain areas. For example, the Angels diversion, as we pointed out in the tape, we are required to keep 5 cubic feet per second below the Angels diversion in the creek that moves on down. We have some requirements where we have to flush below Hunter's Dam into the Stanislaus River. We have requirements on how much water we have to keep in the creek after the Angels Powerhouse. There are also environmental requirements that the red-legged frog and various other things, and I think Larry could probably comment on the cost of all of these various conditions.
I think that'd be a good question for you, Larry. I think the viewers would probably like to know, what does it cost to meet those requirements?
Well, we've spent over $280,000 just to get the license. And when you take a look at the conditions that FERC has placed upon us, we have an estimate of around $350,000 to perhaps $400,000 just to meet those conditions, and then an ongoing cost of $50,000 to $75,000 to do follow-up on those conditions. So it's not an inexpensive project as far as FERC and their requirements are concerned.
Well, in your opinion, does it look like UPA is going to be financially capable of dealing with these conditions and its other obligations?
Well, it's going to be difficult, but I think UPA is capable of dealing with it. Right now, we're on track for power generation to make maybe around $1 million this year. We'll get another $275,000 from 5,000 acre feet that we're going to sell to NCPA. Plus, we have about another $17,000 that we'll make on irrigation. Our budget this year was $1,050,000, if I remember correctly. And so we're going to exceed that this year. But you know, the power market is so volatile. We placed our budget figures very conservatively on, I think it was 36, and it's been as low as 30 this fiscal year. It's been as high as 39 this fiscal year. But we've entered into an agreement, or I guess have just concluded an agreement with a power broker that I think will get around 38 to 39.
I thought it was 43, but this is cents per kilowatt hour.
Yes. And I think it won't go below 38 or 39. I think that's where it came in. But at that figure, like I said, we should be on track to make a little over $1 million this year. The cost, though, for the project, the $1,050,000 that we have budgeted, that includes paying $159,000 a year to LaSalle Bank. We got a $1.7 million loan from them, and we're in the process of paying that off. We are also limited right now on the amount of money that we can accumulate for future projects, and that's, replacement as well as new funds by the agreement that we have with CCWD. Anything over $779,000 has to go to them each year, and so that doesn't leave a lot of room for us to do capital replacement and capital improvement projects. So we're really cutting things pretty close right now. The double-edged sword of the Darby fire is interesting. On the one hand, it certainly put us in a crisis situation, and but we found out that we could still make things work even without a flume. And we found out also, and it didn't surprise me here, that how hard the two communities would work together to make it still continue to have usable water. But the other side of that is that everything that got replaced as a result of the fire is brand new now, and we had some items up there that we were wondering how we were going to fix in the next 5 or 10 years. Well, now they're new. So, as the Lord usually does, He makes a blessing in all situations, and that true blessing of that fire was that we came out the other side, I think, stronger as two communities with a better system.
Dwayne, what's your perspective on the future of UPA? Larry sounds pretty positive. Is that your opinion as well?
Yeah, well, to me, the whole thing depends on the cost of power. As long as the cost of power continues to increase, and that's what we assumed would happen when we took this project over, as long as the cost of power stays up, we will be able to continue the system. I don't think that there is any doubt that if it doesn't, the power doesn't stay up, then the City of Angels and UPUD will have to make up the difference to get the water here. So, yes, I think the project will work. We had lots of great ideas when we first went in about like irrigation, providing irrigation water and that type of thing, but the flows that FERC are requiring going to be very difficult to meet in dry years, so we have sort of put off issuing any more irrigation meters because we want to, and it's going to take about 3 years, I think, to go through this, the in and outs of this project, and to what we want to do on the one hand, to as compared to what we can do with the water that we have. I think we have lots of water. I mean, we have plenty of water for domestic use, but once you start talking about irrigation and this type of thing, then we start running into areas that may be short. And there's always the problem of if we're willing to pay for the water, we can have it. But how much is it going to cost us if the power prices drop and we have to pay for the transmission of the water here, which right now the power's taken care of.
Well, is it fair to summarize that Angels Camp and Murphy's will have enough water for the foreseeable future?
I certainly think so. And that was the whole purpose for taking on this project. If you're talking about domestic use, I don't see it as being a problem. If we talk about expanded irrigation usage, new irrigation usage, I don't think that that's going to be possible. However, our goal is to hold the irrigation usage that we have now. But I think domestically, yes, we have enough water.
What would you say the percentages of irrigation water versus water used for domestic purposes? Or is that something?
I can only quote for UPUD. It's 60% irrigation, 40% domestic in UPUD. I don't think the City of Angels, and Larry may have some input, I don't think the City of Angels has much irrigation. And what we are selling now is about, 30, 40 acre feet that we sell a year to irrigation. So I would say it's about, my guess is it's about 60-40 domestic versus irrigation. That would be my guess, but it is just totally a guess.
Is that going to stay the same in the future, or is it going to shift more to domestic as the area becomes more urban?
It'll have to shift to domestic. As the area grows, I think it's clear that we are growing, both in Angels Camp and Murphy's, that you'll see that percentage start getting heavier on the domestic side. You're going to have more homes, you're going to have more businesses, they're going to demand more treated water. So if we're going to hold irrigation to where it is right now, then the growth side takes place, and the domestic side, it's going to come up. The percentages are going to get closer. I'd like to add another thing to the comment there. We have a real opportunity here to utilize what water is available, and I would agree with Dwayne that we have plenty of water for the foreseeable future, but at some point there's going to be just a measurable amount that's going to be looked at by both UPUD and the City of Angels, and there's going to be 2 cups there, seeing who's going to get the last drop. And but the way the communities have worked together, you know, particularly through the fire and through this joint powers, I think there's a real opportunity now, before the pressure comes on the 2 entities, to work out a way to share this water, to have an agreement by which, as the domestic water and the water availability dwindles, to have an agreement as to how that's going to be addressed, how that's going to be allocated, so that when we get to that point, we've arrived at it with both entities with a smile on their face, saying, okay, we agreed that this is where we were going, and here we are. And I think the opportunity exists now to begin laying the framework for that, and it's my hope that the 2 entities are able to do that in the length of time that they have to do it.
Well, it sounds like Angels and UPUD have a very good working relationship. There's another member to the UPA, and I understand that relationship with them has been a bit stormy in the past. Can you comment on what that's all about and where we're going to go, or what we're going to do toward resolving those differences?
Sure. There's no question that the CCWD's investment in this project is what made it possible. If the 2 entities had to go out and raise the funds, it would have been very difficult to purchase this system. CCWD's participation in the beginning made it possible, and I'll never forget that. I appreciate it a great deal. But we have had our disagreements as to how the system should operate. We're all still talking, and that's good. But we have agreed, in principle at least, for CCWD to drop off the board, and for UPA and and for UPUD and the City of Angels to continue. All the questions that need to be answered for that to happen haven't been answered, but most of them have. And I would foresee in the near future that the JPA will be composed of 2 rather than 3 entities.
Are the issues primarily financial, or is it water usage? What are the significant issues there?
Well, I would have to say there are financial. The main bone of contention has been when, like during the fire and before the fire, when we had cash flow problems, and the board would make an assessment. CCWD was not happy because they did not feel that they were getting any water, and that the City of Angels and UPUD should be the ones who pick up all the assessment cost. However, the contract and agreement says that the 3 entities will share equally. That basically was where the bone of contention occurred, or the other one was that when you went to complete projects or do things, the problem was that we wanted CCWD wanted to see the money returned to them rather than being spent on various projects and this type of thing. So, yes, that's where the contention was. Now, the problems, it appears that we have basically all the, as Larry says, the principal agreement in place, and it's simply a matter of getting the final documents written, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, but we've had a difficult time moving forward on that. We had hoped that we would have it done by the first of the year, but there's been very little progress since September, basically.
What does it look like, time frame, when you would expect this issue would be resolved with CCWD? Is it something that hopefully will happen in the next year? Or?
I hope before the fiscal year is over for UPA that it's resolved. Quite honestly, I agree with Dwayne. I thought it was going to be completed by the first of the year too, but it hasn't been. So it's a continual effort on the part of the directors to make it work. But this is what we get the big bucks for, to work hard to make it work. it's a good, I think it would be good for both CCWD and for us for them to step down and for us to continue. I think it would be, make it easier for us to do some of the things that we need to do to put money away for the future. Right now, with the agreement we have, that's pretty difficult to do. You know, there is another player in all of this, too, and that's NCPA, Northern California Power Association. They got their FERC license at the same time we did, and theirs is for the upper end of this project. And we've been in some negotiations with them also for some changes in agreements, and I think that you'll see continued negotiations in that regard in the future. One of the things that we were concerned about was a wet and dry year, which there are several, what are there, 5 categories, I think?
I believe so.
And if we get a dry year up here, we get a reduction in water flows in the flume, which means a reduction in water available for domestic and irrigation and for power production. Right now, with the usage we have, we don't see that as being a major problem, but sometime down the line, that could have an impact in the operation of the system. One of the things that we were able to work out with NCPA was to move the measurement as to whether it was a dry or a wet year from April till May. May 1st, from April 1st to May 1st. This year was a good example. On April 1st, we were in a dry year situation, and we got a lot of rain in April, which brought us into a wet year. And so we were able to work out some things with NCPA in that regard, which we're very appreciative of, but we have some other negotiations ahead with them too in terms of the operation of the system.
Well, as we bring this session to a conclusion, Dwayne, is there anything else you'd like to add and that our viewers might be interested in?
I'm very optimistic. I have been optimistic about this project. I think Larry will tell you he's often accused me of being too optimistic about it, but I think the project was set on the idea that the cost of power would increase 2% a year. The inflation would start, and we started at 21 cents 7 years ago, and right now we're budgeting on 36, which is almost exactly 2 cents a year. I mean, it works, and if the price of power continues to increase, this project is going to do very well. And Larry has talked about how volatile it is. We have right now $700,000 basically out there that we have never been able to collect because of the bankruptcy of PG&E, and also because NCPA is holding a couple $100,000 that they are afraid that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission will come back and make people pay back for the big exorbitant prices of 2 years ago. So that there's lots of assets out there, and I am very optimistic that this project is going to work, and I know it'll work because if the price of power doesn't stay up, the City of Angels and UPUD will step in and provide the funds necessary to keep it operating.
Well, thank you, Dwayne, and thank you, Larry. On behalf of Paul Muller, I would like to let our viewers know we're lucky to have these two men here who have devoted much of their adult life to the development of water and power facilities here in Calaveras County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Warren.